Smart Architectural Aluminium Building Regulation Update. Here we have the various parts to building regulations. In 2022 we had the flow update. This saw changes to Document F for ventilation. Doc L had an interim uplift for thermals. And Doc O was introduced to address overheating in new dwellings. In 2025 the Future Homes Standard is planned to be released. When published we expect to see further uplifts to the thermal performance, which will be explained later in this presentation. The Future Homes Standard is part of the government's initiative to achieve net zero by 2050. First we will introduce the recent changes to building regulations. This will start with the new Building Safety Act. We will then look at the flow update from 2022 and introduce the 2023 amendments to Document L. Next we will look at the changes in June 2022, for Doc B, fire. In particular the changes to the ban on combustible materials. We explain the changes to Pass 24/2022. Following the changes to Pass 24 it is expected that Document Q will also be updated in 2024. Due to Brexit we also have a new conformity mark called the UKCA mark. This will be replacing CE marking in 2025. We will explain how to prepare for UKCA marking. Towards the end of this presentation we'll look at the anticipated changes for the Future Homes Standard. First, the largest change in 2023 is not an individual regulation but the way building regulations are being policed. Building regulations were enacted with the Building Act in 1984. Following the Dame Judith Hackett review, the way building regulations are to be enforced is changing. The new Building Safety Act received royal assent on the 28th of April, 2022. With secondary legislation and transitional arrangements, the Building Safety Act will be coming into force during 2023. The roadmap for introduction is given here with secondary legislation in a 12-month period. During secondary legislation, we will see new powers introduced overseeing architects and for construction products. Specifically for construction products we will see the Secretary of State as a new enforcement authority. The government has appointed a new building safety regulator, formed within the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive. The remit of the HSE has traditionally been responsible for health and safety at work, looking after the safety of employees. The new HSE Building Safety Regulator will oversee building regulations, effectively looking after the health and safety, not of employees, but of residents in buildings. The Building Safety Regulator will not replace current building inspectors and building control. Existing building inspectors and building control will still oversee building regulation compliance. But there will be a new mandatory registration for approvers of building regulations. The Act will introduce 3 gateways. These will be required to be met at the various stages of construction. The first gateway will need to be satisfied prior to planning. Before construction starts the second gateway will need to be completed. And the last gateway, completed before the building can be occupied. At the second gateway, prior to construction, the Act will introduce a developer tax. This new tax on developers in the residential property market is expected to raise at least $2 billion over a decade. This will be set towards the costs of making buildings safer. In Dame Judith Hackett's report it introduces the concept of a golden thread of information. The thread contains all the information needed to demonstrate that a building is compliant to building regulations, and this information underpins the Building Safety Act. The goal of the Building Safety Act is to strengthen powers to ensure construction products and buildings are built safe. The golden thread will be used to demonstrate compliance throughout the design, construction, and refurbishment of buildings. Initially, the focus will be to ensure the health and safety of buildings. This will include approved Document A relating to structural performance and Part B for the building's fire performance. But it is expected that these extra powers and scrutiny will extend to all parts of a building regulations compliance. The golden thread for the building will be a digital folder which is kept secure. This will need to be made available to persons which may require this information. This will form a single source of truth for demonstrating regulatory compliance. So to summarize, the Building Safety Act will create a framework for high-quality homes for the future. There will be a new developer tax for future remediation works. The Act will have new rights for redress, ensuring that those responsible for defects are in line for costs. The government has created a new building safety regulator within the HSE to oversee the safety of buildings. There will be a new registration for building inspectors. They will oversee the 3 gateways for different stages of construction. Each building will have a golden thread of information to demonstrate compliance. To comply with building regulations, it is first important that we understand the various requirements of the different building regulations, and that we also keep updated with changes. Copies of all the different parts of building regulations can be freely downloaded from the .gov.uk website. On this site it is possible to register for alerts for each part of the building regulations. After registering, an email notification will be sent for any change to that part of the regulations. Recently, building regulations have been updated with minor corrections and amendments more frequently. Whilst notifications can be set up to alert of these changes, the previous versions for minor amendments do not remain accessible on the .gov.uk website. Therefore, downloading and saving a local copy is imperative for all changes, including minor amendments. Looking on the timeline, we had the flow update on the 15th of June. For further details of the 2022 flow update, you can download the full building regulations from the .gov.uk website. For a summarized list of the main changes, SMART published a technical update which can be found on SMART's website. You can also view a video of the seminar which was held in 2022, from the SMART's website. Following the initial publication of Document L, there has been some amendments. The main changes that are listed in the front of the 2023 version is how the energy for district heat networks are calculated. Where district heat networks are a form of shared heating systems, which is then used to heat several properties. But there were also other changes to the way U values of window and doors are calculated. In 2010 the calculation allowed for 3 configurations, EN 14351, BR 443 or the specific size and configuration. In 2022, the reference to 14351 was removed from the text, and note added that standard configuration should not be used for commercial windows. Therefore, commercial windows and doors should be based on the actual size and configuration. Both actual and standard configurations have been retained for domestic properties. Hotbox physical testing to ISO 12567 will be based on standard designs, and these tests are permitted for both commercial and domestic. Standard sizes and designs can be calculated using the SMART's energy rating calculator. In addition, the U values for the actual sizes can also be exported from SMART's estimating software. For larger sizes, because of the increased glass area, the calculated U value will be better than a smaller size. As an example, a 3-pane bifold door which is 2.5 meters by 3.6 meters wide, with triple glazing, achieves a U value of 0.9. This is a larger design than the standard designs offered in building regulations, therefore this can only be used if the actual doors which are installed match this size. In the original 2022 version, the standard size for a casement window was 1.23 meters wide by 1.48 high. However, in the 2023 update the sizes now include tolerances of 25%. For casement windows, the design is an opener next to a fixed. Before the tolerance was applied, the maximum width was 1230. With the tolerance, the permissible width increases to 1537. In the update, the tolerances also apply to doors. Without the tolerances, the maximum standard width for a door was 2 meters. With the tolerances applied, the width increases to 2.5 meters. The energy rating software can include the new size tolerances from document L. As an example, the VG Plus system can achieve a door set energy rating of B, where a rating of C complies for domestic replacement. This door is based on a 2-pane door, which is only 2 meters wide. Selecting the Dock L option on the screen will recalculate the U value with the tolerances applied. When calculated without the tolerances and with a center pane of 1.0, the system achieves a U value of 1.6. With the tolerances applied, the door achieves a lower U value of 1.5. In addition to the amendment to flow, the regulation for fire, Dock B, was also amended in 2022. This amendment includes several changes to the fire safety provisions. In particular, the combustibility ban, which was introduced for tall buildings, originally only applied to 18 meters or over, now applies to buildings which are 11 meters high. The adequately resist clause, which is in the regulation B4, is a requirement to adequately resist the spread of fire over walls. This part B4 remains the same as the 2006 edition. In 2018, saw the introduction of Regulation 7, in approved document B, where paragraph 2 of Regulation 7 explicitly bans the use of combustible materials. This requires the external wall to be tested to the European standard for combustibility EN 13501. Materials forming the wall need to be classified as non-combustible, achieving Class A1 or A2. The ban came into force on the 21st of December, 2018, with a 12-month transition period for building with planning prior to the ban. This requirement has further been amended on the 1st of June, 2022. This ban applies to relevant buildings which are defined in the building regulations. Generally, this is buildings with a story over 18 meters which is used for residential purposes. This is detailed in the green text of the regulations. The change in 2022 did not change the green text, but in the accompanying guidance in the approved document, Table 10.1. This table now requires all residential buildings over 11 meters to have an external surface of Class A2 or better. Therefore, the external wall or surfaces should be to the European Class A1 or A2. Although certain parts of the wall are exempted, these items are detailed in paragraph 3. The European classifications for combustibility range from A to F, where the classes A1 and A2 are considered non-combustible. Class A1 and A2 can be achieved by metals or minerals. Aluminium and rock wool achieves A1. Polyester powder-coated aluminium can achieve a rating of A2. Polymer-based or organic materials, such as PVC, and timber are combustible. Timber achieves Class D, and PVC typically achieves Class E, which is highly combustible. Test results for powder-coated aluminium are available from Interpon. During testing, the powder-coated aluminium achieved fire behavior Class A2, smoke production S1 and flaming droplets D0. Modern aluminium frames include thermal brakes to meet thermal regulations. A polyamide thermal brake and PVC sections achieve Class E. Gasket and membranes made from EPDM rubbers are also classified combustible. You can download the reaction to fire data from the test certification part of SMART's document library on SMART's website. As mentioned earlier, paragraph 3 exempts certain elements of the wall from the ban. In 3i, thermal breaks are exempted from the ban. In addition to the thermal breaks, door frames, doors, window frames, and glass are all exempt from the ban. Further, membranes, seals and gaskets are also exempt from the ban. Whilst membranes are exempt from the ban in the regulation, the additional text in the approved document requires that all membranes achieve Class B or better. EPDM would be considered as Class E. This means that EPDM cannot be used as a membrane. There is debate around whether a perimeter seal should be considered as a seal or a membrane. Both the CWCT, Center for Window and Cladding Technology, and the Society of Facade Engineering have published a joint guidance document. This distinguishes the difference between a membrane and a perimeter seal, based on the width of material. If less than 250 mm, then they consider it can be classified as a seal rather than a membrane. This interpretation allows EPDM less than 250 mm to be used as perimeter seals around windows. OBEX are a manufacturer of membranes and seals. OBEX hold the view that acting in the spirit of Regulation 7, the requirement of Class B would apply to all membranes, irrespective of their application. Therefore, a membrane that creates a seal should also achieve a minimum of Class B, S3, D0. The impacts of the ban effectively remove the use of organic materials from the main parts of the construction of the external wall. Using non-organic, mineral-based insulation such as rockwool is generally not as thermally efficient. This has the effect of making the thermal performance harder to achieve, resulting either in an increase in wall thickness or a decrease in thermal performance. Laminated glass contains an interlayer which when tested is classified as combustible. When glass is used in windows and doors, it is exempt from the ban, so can be laminated. But this only applies to vision glass, spandrel panel and non-vision glass need to be non-combustible. In addition, any glass used in the balustrades of balconies or materials used in decking of balconies also needs to be non-combustible. This precludes the use of laminated glass for spandrel panels, balcony guarding, and also the use of timber in balconies for decking. As we have noted, EPDM membranes would be considered Class E and combustible. OBEX can provide a Class B membrane called Cortex O500FR. They also supply an inorganic, interface sealing membrane which is Class A. So to summarize, from the 1st of June, the ban applies to buildings 11 meters or over. This requires the external wall to be EN Class A1 or Class A2. But there are several exemptions, including vision glass, thermal breaks, window frames, door frames, and doors. There are other changes with the 2022 amendment. It is important to read and understand the full approved document. The latest version and any further updates can be downloaded from the .gov.uk website. In 2022 we had another change, with the publication of PAS 24. This is the publicly available standard which is referenced in approved document Q for security of windows and doors in new build domestic. The main changes in the update were a clarification of test methods, addition of new tools in Group B, and updating to references to proprietary standards. These are the tool groups, which are used in the testing for security attacks. In PAS 24, these attacks are called manual intervention tests. The tools are based on an opportunist burglar, and include 2 credit cards, paint scrapers, and a length of mild steel wire. The original toolsets only included flat blade and cross-point screwdrivers. In the 2022 update the screwdrivers now include a selection of both Torx and hex bits. As well as the new screwdrivers, there is a new integrity test on doors. This test will attempt to defeat the door lock. This attack will be easier if a Euro cylinder is designed to snap. After snapping, this leaves an aperture to attack the lock. Note 2 says the security can be enhanced if the lock and cylinder preps are created with no unnecessary voids. Therefore, for PAS 24/2022 the Euro cylinder preps should be a close fit to the cylinder and not oversized rectangles. Secure by Design have design guides. The new Homes Guide was updated in March 2023. This guide now references the 2022 version of PAS 24 alongside the older 2016 version. But it is noted in the guide that Secure by Design will continue to accept testing to the 2016 version until September 2024. The approved document Q for security still references the 2012 version of PAS 24. The document has not been updated since initial release in 2015. An update to PAS 24 is expected later in 2024. This update would be expected to reference the 2022 version of PAS 24, with hex bits and the tighter cylinder preps currently. Document Q currently only applies to new build domestic. There is thought that the standard could be extended to replacement and commercial markets. Also, the requirement for 6.8 security laminates or P1A is only for doors, side lights to doors. There is a possibility this could be extended to accessible windows. To extend to domestic replacement could simply be implemented with a change to the text Q1. The text on the limits on application could be changed to relate to all dwellings rather than just new dwellings. Whilst it is expected that Doc Q will be extended to replacement domestic, it is not thought it will be extended to include all commercial properties. For commercial building, the security requirements vary and are currently specified by clients based on the risk. This is because the security for commercial properties is based on both the building type and location. A jeweler or a bank will have higher security requirements to a farm building. The infill requirements for P1A currently only apply to doors and coupled side panels. As most window handles contain key locks, unless they are adjacent to a door, the glass in most windows does not need to be security laminated. The requirement for laminated is in Text 4.2, an extract of PAS 24, and is not directly contained in Document Q. As the PAS 24 has recently been updated, this has already been considered as part of this update. When PAS 24 was updated, it was decided not to require all windows to include laminates. With the increases in thermals for the future homes standard, and expected use of triple glazing, the addition of laminated glass would be difficult for the supply chain to meet. Whilst there is no current consultation for an update to Document Q, it is expected that an update may happen later in 2024. If this coincides with the time frames from Secure by Design, this would be around September 2024. When a consultation is published, this will provide more clarity on the changes that can be expected. Looking further ahead towards the end of 2024, this is the end for CE marking, requiring the adoption of UKCA for all construction products, starting from the 1st of January, 2025. When the UK moved out of the European Union, this saw the first introduction of a new UKCA conformity mark in 2021. Until the end of 2024, both CE marking and UKCA mark can be used in Great Britain as a conformity mark. But from 2025, only UKCA marking will be accepted in Great Britain. In Northern Ireland, because of the Northern Ireland Protocol, CE marking or UKNI marking are accepted. And both CE and UKNI will continue to be accepted after the 2025 deadline. Both UKCA and UKNI mark can be issued by UK-approved bodies. The UKNI mark has been created to allow UK companies and approved bodies to supply into Northern Ireland. The UKNI will not diverge from the methods in CE marking. But in the future the methods for UKCA marking may diverge. The original CE marking can only be issued by EU-notified bodies and not UK-approved bodies. Although, some UK test bodies have established European offices or agreements with EU-notified bodies so they can continue to offer CE marking. So from 2025, for goods supplied for sale into Great Britain, they will require to be UKCA marked. The principles and procedures for UKCA marking are like CE marking. Both require that the manufacturer has factory production control procedures and produce declarations of performance. SMART have updated the CE marking guidance and software for UKCA marking. For further details, visit the UKCA page of SMART's website. The next regulation change is the Future Homes and Building Standard, which is planned for 2025. The Future Homes date originally comes from the roadmap which was published in the initial Future Homes consultation. This 2019 consultation related to the recent changes to Document L, when we had the interim uplifts. The uplifts are part of the Future Homes roadmap. These were originally scheduled to come into force in 2020. But the uplifts came into force later in June 2022. In the initial consultation, it was planned that in spring of 2023, the exact technical detail and impact assessment for the Future Homes Standard should have been published. These have not been published and are delayed. There are two consultations for Doc L and the Standard Assessment Procedure SAP, which were scheduled to run from February to June. The 2025 consultation is delayed. Technical details and associated impact assessment have all been delayed from the initial plan. These delays are likely to affect the launch date for the Future Homes Standard, initially scheduled for 2025. When the consultations and impact statements are published, we should see more clarity about any revision to the plan timetable and roadmap. In the recent Future Homes interim uplift of 22, the requirements for existing dwellings reduced the required U value to 1.4, alternatively an energy rating of Band B for windows and C doors. What will the changes be in 2025? It has been confirmed that there will not be any change for existing dwellings, as Future Homes will only apply to new homes. For new homes, there are two values to consider: the limiting value and the notional value. The limiting value is effectively a backstop where the windows and doors area average U value cannot exceed a U value of 1.6. The notional value is the value used in SAP calculation to establish the required energy efficiency of the whole building. After the building energy efficiency is calculated using notional values for the different fabric elements, the building designer can offset certain elements against each other. For example, upgrading the walls or floors will allow the windows U value to be relaxed up to the limiting value. The notional value comes from the standard assessment procedure and the limiting value is from Table 4.1 in Document L. Looking back at the initial 2019 consultation, this proposed a limiting value of 1.6 for both windows and doors. But the notional value, which in the later consultation was referred to as FEES, Fabric Energy Efficiency Standards, did not feature in the original 2019 consultation. The first publication for the notional value of 1.2 came in the Summary of Responses in January 2021 Table 2. Table 2 also contains a column headed Indicative Future Homes Specification, where the indicative values are proposed to be 0.8 for windows and 1.0 for doors. These values have not been consulted and are only indicative. So based on indicative values, the notional U value of 1.2 is expected to go to 0.8 and the notional value for doors to remain as 1.0. In this consultation there is no guidance on what the current limiting value of 1.6 will be in 2025. But it is expected to be around 1.4. The government commissioned a report into SAP for Net Zero. This made several recommendations, including removing the concept of a notional building for compliance. Whilst we may see some significant changes to how the calculations are undertaken, it is not believed that the idea of a notional building will be removed. Currently, no alternative to notional building methods has been proposed or developed. Based on the earlier government consultation, the notional is expected to be 0.8 for windows and 1.0 for doors. In January 2021, there was a second stage consultation for the interim uplift. You will see in this consultation that the title changed. Instead of Future Homes Standard, the consultation is now titled the Future Building Standard. This means that Future Update will apply to new homes and new commercial buildings. But you will see existing homes and commercial will not see any further increases. So new commercial will also be updated around 2025. The notional and limiting values are currently unknown. But based on previous regulations, the values for commercial are expected to be a lower performance than the requirements for domestic. Whilst the ambition was to also implement the Future Building Standard in 2025. There may be different timelines for implementation due to complexities of commercial buildings. We will know more about the timelines of commercial after the next publication of the Future Standards or SBEM consultation. If we look at the U values for domestic, we can see the overall trends for windows, with the U value reducing, improving thermal performance with each iteration of building regulations. The indicative notional value suggested the U value of 1.2 will drop to 0.8. There is no official guidance on the limiting value, but looking at the trends this may drop to 1.4. A window U value of 0.8 will need to be triple glazing. Setting the limiting value to 1.4 could allow designers scope for double glazing still to be used in new build. Through value engineering and offsetting against different elements to achieve the same overall efficiency of the notional building with triple glazing. Before the impact assessment and consultation for 2025 is published, we can review the details from the earlier interim uplift for indications for the likely outcome in 2025. Question 110 asked if the proposed fees should be higher. The question is not clear and ambiguous to if this is higher fabric or efficiency. Because a higher fabric specification or higher efficiency have totally opposite meanings. Raising the fabric U value will lower the building efficiency, and conversely lowering the fabric will raise the efficiency. The question also combined all the fabric elements together. Responses which may have related to other elements such as walls or the floor's performance were combined with window fabric performance. The breakdown of responses is shown in the table. 30% of respondents did not answer this important question. The majority that answered thought that it should be higher. The government took this as the efficiency to be higher rather than the U value to be higher. This was confusing as option 2 was a multiplier on the fabric specification or U values. It was noted that responses in the consultation raised concerns about the supply chain to achieve 1.2 U value. The consultation feedback of it should be higher has been interpreted as a desire to further improve the energy efficiency. For existing dwellings, new thermal elements relate to extensions and the heading replacement of controlled fittings is for replacement windows. For the interim uplift, lowering the U value to 1.4, saved £69 million of energy, however the incremental costs are calculated as £182 million. In the impact assessment, this had a net financial cost not a financial benefit. It is not only the potential financial benefits, but in the goal to net zero, we know we must reduce our carbon emissions. The impact assessment also considered the potential carbon savings. The uplift for replacement windows saved £79 million of carbon and a net cost of £28 million. In the journey to net zero, based on the government impact assessments for the uplift, Whilst lowering U values did not offer financial savings, it has provided carbon savings. So what is the future of windows and glazing? Double glazing, triple glazing, or even quadruple glazing? Looking at the chart from Saint-Gobain, using soft coats and a 16 mm gas cavity. Single glazing has a center pane of 6. Double glazing with one cavity is on the left and can achieve a center pane of just over 1. Triple glazing, with 2 cavities, the center pane is around 0.5. As we add more cavities, the center pane reduces, but we get diminishing returns. Even though we are approaching zero. Net zero is not zero center pane. A center pane of 0 even with 20 cavities is not possible. For a unit made with 10 sheets of glass, with 9 cavities, this would give a center pane of around 0.1. However, the unit would be over 180 mm thick. Both the financial and carbon benefits need to be carefully considered in setting the optimum fabric thermal efficiencies to help achieve net zero. The table reflects current indicative values from previous consultations. When the next consultation and impact assessment have been published, this will help to confirm these values and likely timeframes. To summarize, the Future Homes and Future Building Standards ambition is to be implemented by 2025. The changes will only apply to new build and there are no changes planned for replacement of existing. The indicative Future Homes standard is currently 0.8 for new windows and 1.0 for new doors. The limiting value for domestic and the values for new commercial are currently not known. This presentation has summarized both recent and anticipated changes to building regulations. To comply with building regulations, it is first important that we understand the various requirements of the different building regulations, and that we also keep updated with changes. For full copies of all the different parts of building regulations and any future updates can be downloaded from the .gov.uk website.